Greetings. My name is Coach Jaki, and I am a certified life coach. I'm also a mental health coach. In this presentation, I will share some information about what happens during adolescence. And the purpose of sharing this information is to support parents to build their confidence in navigating this season effectively for themselves and for their adolescents. I would like to start off with a quick exercise. It's imagination, but I hope that you will join me in thinking about this. So I'd like you to imagine that you're hiring for a position and you invite a man or woman to the interview. They come accompanied by their parents. And when you step out of your office to call them into the room, they turn to their parents to ask for permission. And when you ask them a question inside the interview room, they reach for their phone to call the waiting parent to ask what they should say. Weird, right? Yeah, that's weird. The thing is, if children don't break the childhood bonds with their parents, this scenario would be normal. Adolescence is the transition from being closely bonded and dependent on parents to standing on their own 2 feet. In other mammals, cows, for instance, this process takes minutes. The calf stands on its own almost as soon as it is born. And if it doesn't do that, it will die because it will not even be able to reach its mother's teats to feed. It's just that in human beings, this process of becoming completely independent starts much later, and it also lasts longer. Let's start off by defining adolescence. So the World Health Organization defines adolescence or adolescents as people who are aged between 10 and 19 years of age. Another definition is that adolescence is a period of life with very specific needs, both in terms of health and development. And it's also a period during which these people have got certain rights. It's a time to develop knowledge and skills, to learn to manage emotions and relationships, and to acquire attributes and abilities that are important for navigating adolescence itself, but also for becoming effective adults. During adolescence, there are very many changes that happen. These are physiological changes, but also there are changes in the way the brain works. There are changes emotionally and socially. And in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about these changes in detail. So as we have said, there are many biological changes that take place during adolescence, and the most obvious of these are related to, the size of the child. They grow in height, they add muscle, they add fat, but then they also undergo sexual maturation. So sexual organs develop. Girls begin menstruating. Boys, aside from developing the sexual organs, they also start to grow body hair, facial hair, especially. But there are also other changes during this time, and one of the key changes is related to the brain. In actual fact, by the time a child is 6, their brain has fully developed. It actually achieved 90 to 95% of the size that it will be in adulthood. And of course, those early years are critical for brain development, but it still needs a lot of remodeling. So when during adolescence, this remodeling happens. So certain connections in the brain that have not been used are pruned off. So the body gets rid of them, but at the same time, new connections are developed. And this, of course, is the way in which the brain becomes efficient. The pruning process, if we may call it that, starts at the back of the brain, and the front of the brain is actually remodeled last. In fact, the full remodeling of the front of the brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex, is completed at around age 25. Now, this is significant because this is the part of the brain that is responsible for your child's ability to plan, to think, to make judgment, and to think about the consequences of actions, to solve problems, and to control impulses. And because this prefrontal cortex is still developing, teenagers tend to rely on the part of the brain that is called the amygdala. They rely on it so much more than adults do. This part of the brain is associated with emotions, impulses, aggression, and this instinctive behavior. And I think that helps to understand why teenagers can be seen to be all over the place and, you know, like they don't think. And I think that is a description that many people will give of teenagers. So what you will see is a child who is sometimes mature, who sometimes behaves in mature manner and sometimes behaves in, you know, what can only be described as a childish or stupid, or, you know, just sometimes you just think that they are crazy. They will indulge in risky behaviors. They will exhibit more emotions and stronger emotions at that. And they are also very, very prone to impulsive decisions, as we have already said. So what can you do about this? What can you do about this? First of all, I just want to draw your attention to the graph. This graph shows you that about half of adolescents actually do not exhibit risky behaviors, or they may exhibit just one risky behavior. And less than a quarter of adolescents actually exhibit 4 or 5 risky behaviors. And when we talk about risky behaviors, we're talking about sex, unprotected sex. We're talking about maybe experimenting with drugs and alcohol. We are talking about maybe drink driving. Those are the kinds of risky behaviors that we are talking about. But I also want to draw your attention to the fact that while this study was done in the US, other studies have shown that adolescent behavior, especially in respect of risky behavior, is very similar across cultures and across countries. So what can you do in view of this? You can encourage empathy, encourage your child to talk about his or her feelings and talk about yours as well. Show them that people have got different perspectives on things and people experience different circumstances, and reinforce the fact that their actions have consequences, not just on themselves, but other people as well. Talk about the immediate and long-term consequences of actions, but also try to match your level of language to the level of your child. There is a tendency for some parents to baby their children, but then sometimes also you are too complex for them. Remember, their brains are still developing. So it's important to gauge and assess the level of language that you need to use so that your child truly understands what you're talking about. You can help your child to develop decision-making and problem-solving skills by working through, using a process that allows them to work through an issue, you know, so they can define the problem, they can generate some options, and then they can consider different consequences of different options before they decide. And if you role model this process, then it will be easier for your child to practice and learn these processes as well. And practicing these processes also helps the brain to continue to develop in the appropriate manner. How teenagers spend their time is really crucial to their brain development. So as a parent, I would encourage you to facilitate a varied range of activities and experiences for your child. So it's not about just facilitating their experiences in areas, only the area that they are interested in, but try to get them to be involved in a variety of experiences, because as they develop and seek a new identity, they will take some healthy risks. Allow them to take some healthy risks, and new and different experiences help them to develop an independent identity. Help your child to find outlets for their emotions, for their very strong feelings. Many teenagers find that participating in sport, being involved with music and creative arts actually allows them to channel the strong emotions that they feel at this age in a productive manner. Talk through decisions step by step with them, ask about possible consequences of actions that they might choose, and encourage them to weigh potential consequences. Family routines are actually important at this stage because they allow the child to have some structure. But it's also important that you provide boundaries and opportunities for the adolescents to negotiate these boundaries. They still need guidance and they need limit setting, so don't give up on it, but at the same time, don't create impermeable boundaries because they need some flexibility. Offer praise and positive rewards for desired behavior, because this also reinforces pathways within your child's brain. And again, just be a positive role model, because your behavior will show your adolescent the type of behavior that you expect. Staying connected with your child allows you to keep an eye on their activities and their friends. And being open and approachable makes it easier for your child to stay connected with you. You can also help them to understand what's happening with their brain, so that they are also not distressed when their behavior fluctuates from one day to another. And this could be useful in helping them to process their feelings. Another important aspect of development during the adolescent years is in the social sphere. So there will be many social changes. Because these people, adolescents, are busy working out who they are and where they fit in the world, you will notice them trying out new things, new clothing styles, new music, new friendship groups, perhaps. And don't be surprised that these new things that they are trying out seem to be polar opposites of what you have done with them or what you have encouraged them to do in the past. This is actually part of that search of identity. They're not going to find their identity by being exactly like you or doing exactly what you have always done with them. They will want more independence. They will want to have a say on how they get around and where they go, how they spend their time and who they spend it with. They will want to have a say on how they spend their money. So as they become more independent, you may find that you need to make certain changes to family routines and relationships. They could begin to take on more responsibility at home and at school, and encourage them as much as possible to do that. This also helps them to learn. This also helps to give them a sense of independence, and it can help to ground them when they know that they have certain responsibilities. They will try new experiences, especially risky ones. And as I have said before, this is absolutely normal at this stage. They need to express themselves. I think it's important to remember that they need to express themselves as individuals. But as we have said, because of how the brain develops, they will struggle with thinking through consequences and risks before trying something new. So provide an environment where they can come and talk to you about decisions that they are trying to take, and then you can help them to think through different options and different consequences before they make a decision. It is also a time when they start to develop a stronger individual set of values and morals, and they will question more things. And again, your words and actions will help to shape their sense of right and wrong. But then again, don't be surprised if they decide to go in the complete opposite direction from you. This is just one of the ways in which they are testing their boundaries, they are testing their limits. Friends and peers will have a strong influence on your child at this time. They will have a strong influence on their appearance and interests, on their sense of self and self-esteem. But you still have a very strong influence, especially on long-term activities. So don't think that you are no longer relevant. You still are. Knowing who their friends are, staying connected with your child and being able to communicate with your child will help you to influence the peer influence on your child. Another level of social changes in adolescence is really related to sexual identity. So your child will be definitely more interested in the opposite sex. They will be more interested in having romantic relationships. But these aren't always intimate relationships, by the way. Children are not necessarily. The fact that your adolescent is interested in somebody of the opposite sex does not mean that they are having a sexual relationship. And in conversations that I have had with many teenagers over the years, this is one thing that they say over and over again, that just because I was talking to a girl or because I was talking to a boy doesn't mean that we're having sex. I know the consequences of sex. I'm not ready, blah, blah, blah. So it's important for you to remember that. And not to assume that they are having a sexual relationship. The internet and social media have got a strong influence on how your child communicates. Of course, it's how your child communicates with their friends and all that. And it does, I mean, social media, the media have a strong influence on their social development, but there are also certain risks, and you can talk to your child about what those risks are, so that they can use the internet safely. Banning them outright is really not a solution. They will find a way around it, and they will rebel against you. We have talked about the fact that adolescents experience very strong emotions, and some of the emotions that they feel very strongly at this age are shame and humiliation. And while they might know these words, they may not always recognize these emotions. And as we have said, because their brain is still developing, they don't always have the skills to express and manage such emotions in an adult way. And that is why it's important for you to be patient and to help them to understand what is going through, and also to talk about the root of those emotions. We talk a lot about mood swings in adolescents and teenagers, and yes, they do have their moods really shift from one end to the other, and therefore they can be very unpredictable. And sometimes they also just react to things in totally unexpected ways, and this is partly because they are not good at interpreting or reading people's like body language or facial expression, as well as adults do, and this might come as a surprise. So that is where you sometimes, you're speaking to your child, and you maybe your intention is to understand them, and then they just react like you're interrogating them. They can also be very self-conscious. They think a lot about how they look, and as their bodies are growing bigger, sometimes even their movement is awkward, and they're very, very, very sensitive about how they look. They go through a stage where they act without thinking a lot of the time, and this is, as we have said, is because their decision-making skills are still developing, and therefore they often do things that have consequences that they didn't intend or that they didn't want, and this can lead to, this in itself can lead to emotional outbursts. So you will see that your child wants to spend more time with friends and peers and less time with you or with family. You will experience more arguments with your child. But these changes actually show that your child is developing into their own person. And as we have said, this is an evolutionary step, and they need to develop into their own person. Because your child is starting to think more abstractly and to question different points of view, including yours, it can lead to conflict. But as we have said, as the adult, you are called to take the higher road and to understand that to a certain extent, they actually can't help it. How can you help? Being a role model remains important. So you model positive relationships with your friends and other people around you, because your child will learn something from seeing how you resolve conflict, how you empathize and respect other people in your life. You can also role model positive ways of dealing with difficult emotions. For example, you might be feeling cranky and tired after a long day at work, and then somebody wants to talk to you about something. You could always say, I'm really tired and I don't think that I can have a meaningful conversation without getting upset. Can we postpone this to tomorrow? This is one of those things that would be very useful for your teenager or your adolescent to see you modeling, because sometimes you may require it of them. Get to know your child's friends, because this helps you to, first of all, show that you recognize how important your child's friends are to your child, but it will also help you to keep up with your child's social relationships. And if you're concerned about your child's friends, you may be able to guide your child gently away from certain people, rather than banning your child's friends. It's really, really important at this stage for you to listen to your child's feelings. Active listening is really a powerful way of strengthening your relationship with your adolescent. And to listen actively, you need to stop what you're doing when your child wants to talk. If you're in the middle of something, make a time when you can listen, respect your child's feelings and opinions, and try to understand their perspective, even if it's not the same as yours. For example, you could just say to your child that it sounds like you're feeling left out because you're not going to the party on Thursday night. That is an acknowledgement that you understand what they're feeling. And sometimes your child just needs to vent. So don't feel obliged to give advice or to comment on everything that they say. And it's important for you to be able to distinguish those moments when they just need to vent. Being open about your feelings and telling how your child how you feel when they behave in particular ways also helps them to learn how to deal with how to read and respond to certain emotions or to emotions. And again, it's a way of modeling positive and constructive ways of relating to other people. It can be as simple as saying something like, I felt really happy when you invited me to your school performance. Active listening requires you to build trust and establish rapport, ask specific questions, demonstrate concern, use brief verbal affirmations, and this will actually help you to stay connected with your child, which, as we have said, is an important way of ensuring that you can help them navigate adolescence. Talking about relationships, sex, and sexuality is also important. Talking about it in an open and non-judgmental way can actually promote trust between you. But it's best to look for everyday times when you can easily bring up these issues, rather than having a big talk or listening out to questions that your child might have and then using those as teachable moments. When these moments come up, it's good to find out what your child already knows and correct misinformation and give facts. You can also use these conversations to talk about appropriate sexual behavior and help your child to understand consent, things like sexting, things like pornography, and let your child know that you're always available to talk about any questions or concerns. Focusing on the positive is really important. And I know that it can be difficult because you always seem to be in conflict with your adolescent who seems to be very moody. But if you can focus and reinforce positive aspects of his or her social and emotional behavior, it will really help you to stay connected with them. So for example, you could praise your child for being a good friend, or for having a wide variety of interests, or for trying hard at school. I will now just make a brief comment about adolescent mental health. Your love and support and a strong relationship with you is important for your adolescent's mental health. It can even reduce chances of your child experiencing mental health problems. So show love, affection, and care for your child. As we said, they are part child and part adult. They still need you, even though they act like they don't. So it's good that you continue to show them love and affection. Show that you're interested in what's happening in their life. Praise their efforts, their good points and achievements, and value their ideas and opinions. Ask their opinion in certain situations, and take their advice in certain situations. Spend time with them and enjoy spending time with them. And you need to do this one-on-one with your teenager, but also organize activities that involve your teenager and other family members. And as we have said, encourage this adolescent to talk about feelings with you. It's very important for them to feel that they don't have to go through things on their own, and that they can work together with you to find solutions to problems. Deal with problems when they arise, rather than letting them build up. And you can always get help from trusted family members, doctors, or other professionals if there is need for that. I draw your attention to this, the image on the right. Again, it is the research that was done in the US, but as I have said, when it comes to adolescent behavior, other studies have demonstrated that those behaviors are very similar across cultures and across countries. And this research by the CDC shows that teens who felt connected to family and school were 65% less likely to use illicit drugs. They were 54% less likely to be diagnosed with STDs as adults, and they were 51% less likely to report having experienced physical violence in the recent past as adults. And I share this to show you that a good transition through adolescence carries on, has very many positive influences on the adult that this adolescent will become. And so the conclusion of this study was that school and family connectedness in adolescence has protective effects for health, risk behaviors, and experiences related to mental health, violence, sexual health, and substance use well into adulthood. As I come to the end, I just want to remind you something, and this is that your child has 3 fundamental needs, and these 3 needs are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So the competence refers to their need to be effective in dealing with their environment. And this calls for you to teach them the skills that they need to navigate through life. And these skills are taught, right from birth, depending on the age and all that. But don't forget that there's a first time for everything. And so you have an opportunity as a parent to teach your child very, very many skills. Autonomy is the need for them to control the course of their lives. And so you need to allow them space to explore, to learn, and grow. Of course, it has to be safe spaces. And during adolescence, the challenge is that they are prone to risky behavior, but you really need to allow them to take healthy risks because it's important for them to grow. And finally, relatedness is the need to have close, affectionate relationships with others. And I just want to point out here that sometimes people who are parenting alone struggle with this when their adolescents want to identify with the parent who is not consistently in their life. And sometimes because of the relationship that led to that situation, the parent who is constantly present maybe does not want to talk about it, or maybe doesn't want the teenager to be involved with the other parent. But this is something it's very important to think about how this affects your child, and as far as possible to find a way that will allow the child to identify with their other parent. It's an important need for them. It's also important for children to feel part of the extended family. And again, I talk about children who maybe were born out of wedlock, maybe they are being raised, or they spend a lot of time with their mother's family, just as an example. And sometimes you may not be aware of it, but other children might be busy telling your child, you don't belong here. Because they know that child's father is not from that home, and you may not be aware of it. But such conversations, it's important for you to help your child to understand such situations so that they don't feel that they are missing out on relatedness. So having known all this, I just want to spend a little bit of time on talking about what might be causing you as a parent to struggle through adolescence, as your child is going through adolescence. One of the reasons why you might struggle is because you don't understand the changes. And that is why I've spent quite a bit of time speaking about the changes, just giving you the information so that you know what is going on. And this can help you to understand that it's not just your child. It is actually something normal that is happening. Sometimes you struggle because you project your fears or your failures or your issues onto your child. It's really important for you to separate them from your child and to deal with them separately and get help for yourself if it's necessary. If you don't connect with your child, it's going to be even more difficult for you to influence them during adolescence. So make the effort. And if you can do that connection or have that connection even before they're adolescents, even better. And then there is also the element of wanting to control your child. But as we have said, your child is going to grow into an adult, whether you want it or not. And rather than trying to control them, it might make more sense for you to try and coach them, for you to try and guide them. And adolescence is just a transition. It passes, and sometimes you even wonder whether the adult child is the same person that you had been experiencing for 5 or 6 years before. It's also good to remember that your adolescent is dealing with many issues at the same time as he or she is struggling to understand him or herself. So being patient and kind will actually go a long way in helping you to navigate adolescence with your child. But it's also important for you to take care of yourself because adolescent years can be very trying. And so looking after yourself will really help you. So ask for help, spend some time alone, put yourself first once in a while, ask for what you need, set boundaries, stay at home if you want to stay at home or go out if you want to go out, practice saying no, forgive yourself, you know, those issues that I was talking about, those mistakes that you made when you were their age, forgive yourself. And sometimes you just need to take a step back and allow life to happen. Was looking after yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally helps you to give your children what they need to grow and thrive. If you want to read some more about this topic, there are some references over there. And I want to thank you for your attention.